2 Corinthians chapter 2. Now we're still in unforgiveness. The Power of Forgiveness is the series that we're in. And I'm going to mention this. I have tonight's message and I have next week's message that's on the negative. And then we're going to start getting to the positive, how to fix it. And so tonight we're going to be looking at unforgiveness gives ground to the devil. So we've already seen unforgiveness leads to bitterness. And in 2 Corinthians chapter number 2, we'll pick up in verse number 10. Now Paul is writing to the church at Corinth the second time. And in this chapter he is saying, I had to write that first letter to you. I know that it hurt some of you in the church. I know some of you were offended at it. And so that's the first several verses in 2 Corinthians chapter 2. And he gets down to verse number 10, and he says this, to whom you forgive anything, I forgive also. And so the I here is Paul. And he's saying, if anybody there forgives, I'm going to forgive. And so Paul is again being the example here. You forgive, I'm going to forgive. For if I forgave anything, to whom I forgave it, yet for your sakes I forgive it in the person of Christ. So he's saying, I forgive you. You're probably back. And there were some that were in the church that were speaking poorly of Paul and raking his character through the coals and just, every time that Paul's name came up, they had something negative to say about it. And so Paul is saying, I forgive that. And here's the reason why. In verse number 11, it says, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. And unfortunately, I think we're ignorant of his devices. I think that sometimes we fall into the being used of Satan to tear down others. Now, the situation here is in the church. But we're not just speaking of in the church, we're speaking of in our life. So it could be in your family, it could be extended family, it could be in the workplace, except for John, who's retired now. All right, it could be with your dog. But it certainly can be in the church, it can be anywhere. An unforgiving spirit will give ground to the devil. And I think, and I'm of the persuasion, that Paul, even though Paul says, for we are not ignorant of his devices, I think sometimes we are. He'll use us to be that negative influence. He'll use us. You guys remember the Dark Ages? Some of you were there. I mean, you're in that age range. But I mean, in the Dark Ages, the witch hunts and the different things like that, that was the Catholic Church really hunting down believers. And they called it a witch hunt. If you go back and you look like in Fox's Book of Martyrs and you look at the Trail of Blood, those are, a couple of booklets about that time frame. A lot of those that were killed in that time were believing Christians. But what did the Catholic Church think they were doing? They thought they were doing the work of God. I think we talked about that Sunday morning, didn't we? I think it was Sunday morning. Didn't we talk about that? You remember I had God over on this side and I had the devil over on this side? And he uses religion. And sometimes we think, when I say we, religions think they're actually doing the work of God. Well, sometimes as Christians, we might think we're doing the work of God, and really it's a device of Satan. So we need to be careful of that because we don't want to have Satan get an advantage of us. I sure would hate to have this church torn apart because we let Satan in it and let him get an advantage. 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8, this is a well-known verse. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. I'm gonna call names. You know who Satan wants to devour? He wants to devour Randall, John, David, Jordan, John, Pastor. Who did I just call out? Yeah, not all the men of the church, though. I left a couple of men out. These are heads of households. You know who Satan really wants to destroy? Is the family unit. He really wants to destroy the family. If he can destroy the family, you know what else he could destroy? Wherever the family is. Church. Wherever the family goes. So guys, you've got a target on your back. Now, let me tell you who else he wants to devour. Tammy, Tangi, Lauren, Betty, Angela, Amanda, Stephanie. Now I named all the granddaughters. You know why he wants to devour you? Well, do you have an influence? You absolutely do. Now, I'm going to throw in Art and James now. James, holy cow. Young men. Young men. If he can destroy that generation, who can he get? The next generation. And then the generation after that. And then the generation after that. So we need to be sober, be vigilant, because our adversary, and we ought to not ever get complacent about our adversary. And too often, we as Christians are complacent about our adversary. Go with me to Ephesians chapter 4, and this is where we'll spend the rest of our time. Ephesians chapter 4. So we need to forgive so that we don't let Satan get an advantage of us, as Paul said in 2 Corinthians, so that he doesn't devour us, as Peter says in 1 Peter. And then in Ephesians, Paul touches on this again at the church at Ephesus. Now, it's interesting to me that he's almost writing the same thing to different churches. Do you think that maybe different churches have the same problem? And Satan is that problem? Ephesians chapter 4, we'll pick it up in verse 26. You guys have heard this verse before, right? Be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. And I think here recently we covered be angry and sin not. Is it okay to be angry? Isn't that an emotion that God gave to us? He made us emotional beings. Is it wrong to love? No. Is it wrong to be happy? No. Is it wrong to show an emotion? No. And so here it says, be ye angry. And then it says, and sin not. Now, when is it that we go from anger to sin? I mean, how do we get from angry to sin? I mean, there's angry and sinning not, but how do we get from angry to sin? Right. It's when we put action to the emotion. All right? As soon as you utter, idiot, as soon as you throw your hand onto the horn, now thankfully today, before preaching this message, I did not have an incident on the way to church. I think when I was preaching on this a couple of, however long ago it was, there was that incident. of the idiot in front of me who didn't know how to work a stop sign. And so, thankfully, I didn't have that issue today. So I don't have a fresh illustration of that. But as soon as we put action to our anger, as soon as we put action to whatever the negative emotion is, that's when we sin. And sometimes this is the action. Did you see what I just did? I just made a face. That's putting action to your anger. Right? Why is it that we should not be angry? Why is it that we should be angry and sin not? And why is it we shouldn't let our wrath, the sun go down upon our wrath? Verse 27, neither give place to the devil. I'm going to pick on my granddaughters. So you guys know Monday was my birthday, right? John and his family comes over in the evening. We have a little celebration time. My granddaughters bought me a gift. Actually picked out the gift. And Valerie was so proud of that gift that she got for me. They got me a box of golf balls. And when I first opened up the box of golf balls, when I unwrapped it, all I saw on there was the word kale. Kale golf balls. You know how much I love kale, right? So that's the first thing that I saw was kale. But there was a little design on the box, and there's another letter, but it was kind of lost in that design. And so I'm laughing, and then I'm scorning. I can't believe you bought me kale golf balls. And then I looked at their mother, because I'm sure she's the one that took them shopping. Hey, here's some kale golf balls. Let's get that for Papa. Yes, Valerie picked it out. By the way, they're not kale, it's kalea. The A was lost in the design there, and so when you actually turn the box on its side, where there's no design, you can see it. And they bought me the golf balls so that I could beat Mr. Randy at golf. There you go. That's exactly what I was told after I opened them up. This is so you can beat Mr. Randy at golf. And so don't break granddaughters' hearts. But anyways, I'm using that if I was really upset because they bought me kale golf balls. It says here, let not the sun go down upon your wrath. I was nowhere near that. Don't even think anything. But if I was annoyed at it, you know what I should do before the night is over? Before the sun goes down. Now, what time does the sun go down in Tucson, Arizona? Yeah, right now it's after 7, isn't it? So I think, what time did we open presents? Do you remember? I remember that Talia was sitting on the armrest next to me looking at me like, can we open them now?
You'll never open them soon enough.
And so it's still daylight outside, so the sun hadn't gone down. But it says here, let not the sun go down upon your wrath. That doesn't mean don't wait until midnight. It doesn't mean don't wait till you go to bed. Well, some of you do go to bed before sun. So what this is saying, and I've heard so much preaching about this, about don't go to bed, don't let the day, don't let midnight pass so it goes into another day. I've heard all that. But what does the scripture say? Don't let the sun go down. All right, so by 7 o'clock at least, 7 p.m. Tucson time. And by the way, where do you all live?
Tucson.
All right, do you live in Tucson? So by then, you need to get rid of the wrath. Now, how do we do that? That's forgiving. Most of the time, we're wrathful because somebody did something to us. And we need to forgive. Be ye angry, sin not. Why? The next verse tells us, neither give place to the devil. What happens if I had a problem with Kale golf balls? What if I had a problem with Kale golf balls that my granddaughter got me? And I was angry at her and annoyed at her. And so I'm going to sit here and look at her. And if I let the sun go down on my wrath, what is that going to do with our relationship? Right? And what better relationship is there between Papa and granddaughter? You know, it's the best. Every time, you know, they come to my house, sometimes when they're here, they come running and leaping on me and give me a hug. Especially that one that bought me the golf balls. They picked them out. The older one is like, Papa. But what would that do with our relationship? So here comes Valerie running. She sees Papa. She's running at me. But I've got an issue because I let the sun go down on my wrath. Here she comes running, full bore, to give Papa a hug. And I'm like, yep, clothesline. Or she hits my hand this far away. And I'm like, don't touch me. What does that do to our relationship? Right? Now I'm just talking about Papa and granddaughter. All right, now what about husband and wife?
It happens at 9 o'clock at night.
Well, the sun's already down. All right. So, since you opened that can of worms, let me go ahead and step into that. Ladies. Oh man, I'm going to be in so much trouble.
Tell us you had the dream.
Ladies, the time to talk to your husband is not when he's laying down in the bed in his pajamas ready to go to sleep. That is not the time. Okay, you had, especially you older, especially you, John Tangi, you've got all day now. You don't have to wait for him to come home. Yeah, you've got all day. And it could be from 5 o'clock until, Jordan, what time do you usually get home? 5, 6? 4:30? 4:30? Well, you work at home, so you've got all day. All day. If somebody else opened this can of worms, I'm gonna hang myself with it because mine is over there and she's listening. Yeah. Your TV show is not that important. The TV needs to be muted or turned off if you have an issue with your spouse and you need to take care of it before bedtime. Bedtime is not the time to talk about it. Okay, bedtime is time to go to bed. That's why it's called bedtime. But it's not pillow nag. It's not pillow chew out. It's not pillow let's bring up what he did in the day. Since you opened that can of worms. No, I'm kidding. I'm already in so much trouble. Thank God my wife and I survived 40 years. I'm not going to be here on Sunday. I'm just going to let you know now. I'm going to be 6 feet. If you don't see me on Sunday, send them out somewhere in the desert, because my wife has seen all the CSIs, the FBIs, the NCISs. She knows how to get rid of a body and not leave any trace. She's learned how to do that. But I'm jesting, but I'm also being serious. That really is not the time. We have all day to take care of that. And really, my wife and I have gotten to the place where we try not to do that. We try not to make bedtime nag time, right? And I call it that. It's not time for the chewing out. It's not the time for, hey, let me tell you what you did. Because the sun is down. Okay, the sun is down. And so let's not give place to the devil, because what's your husband going to do after you chew him out right when he's trying to go to sleep? Is he even listening to you? Does he care? He doesn't care. All he is hearing is some screeching, and this is my bedtime. And what does that do? What is the devil now doing? Well, he's got a place. He's got a place. My wife and I were talking, I think it was after last week's lesson, and I had made the comment in the preaching that a lot of times problems are between husband and wives. Bitterness happens between husbands and wives. And, she mentioned to me that I ought to preach a message on husbands, be not bitter against your wives. That's in the scriptures. Now, how does that happen? We give place to the devil. We're ignorant of his devices. He is trying to devour us. And so we give place to the devil. We give place to him in our marriages, in our families. So this is now between parents and children, in our workplaces, in church. We give place to the devil. All right, let's go on. So verses 28 and 29, it's just a couple of other things. Let him that stole, steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands the thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that needeth. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. Grieve not the Holy Spirit, in verse number 30. Grieve not the Holy Spirit of God, whereby ye are sealed unto the day of redemption. Now look at verse 31. It says, let all bitterness, and we can put the word all in front of each one of these words. Let all bitterness and all wrath and all anger and all clamor and all evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. What does that mean? So I had to do a little digging, because if you go to a different version of the Bible, it says along with all malice. Alongside all malice. So it's throwing malice into that list. But if you look at the words behind it, you see that bitterness, that's a regular noun. Wrath is a regular noun. Anger is a regular noun. Clamor is a regular noun. Evil speaking is a regular noun. Be put away from you is the verb. Then it says with all malice. That's an adverb. So how is it that we're to put these things away from us? That's what with all malice means. How many of you hate bitterness? How many of you hate wrath? How many of you hate anger? How many of you hate clamor? How many of you hate evil speaking? That's the place that we have to get to for us to be able to put it all away. That's how that verse was meant to be read. We need to let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking, let all of that be put away with us with all malice. And like I said, I've heard, and if you look in other versions of the Bible, it says along with. But if you just scratch the surface on looking at the words behind it, the Greek words behind it, you see that bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking is the subject. You guys remember English grammar? Okay, you have the verb, right, which is the action, and the subject is the one doing the action. That's those things. You guys remember what an adverb is? It modifies the verb. That's with all malice. So how do we put all these things away with that hatred that I was just talking about? We need to get to the place where we hate sin as much as God hates it. That's when we take away the place of the devil. When we get to the place where we hate evil with a hatred in our lives, we hate that sin in our lives just like God hates it, then we take away that place for the devil. Because right here is where the devil is, isn't he? When we give place to the devil, when we're angry and we let the sun go down on our wrath, or we let him get an advantage from us, or we let him devour us, you know he's right here. And if I stand like this, who is between the pastor of the church, the shepherd, and the sheep? Yeah. If I give place. All right, now let's reverse that. Here's the pastor, but here's you standing. All right, so here's you and the devil is there. What's between you and the shepherd of the church? Your shepherd. By the way, what's between you and God now? Because we gave place to the devil. And now the one that's supposed to be here to comfort and to help and to admonish, all those things that we find in the scriptures, there's somebody between us. He's either attached to me, or he's attached to you, or it's an and. He's attached to me and he's attached to you because we've given place to the devil. We need to be careful of that. And if there's something between, if he's between us and he's between us collectively, then have we not given him the advantage? I believe we've given him the advantage. And so we need to get to the place where we hate with a passion bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking. We need to get to the place where we hate those things. Put them away. Get rid of them. I'm going to use a little Spanglish on you. Chuckalo. You got to throw it. You got to get rid of it. When I say you, I mean we. Now, next week, here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at each one of these words in this verse, bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking. And then after that, so next week is going to be one more on the negative, and then after that, we're going to look at steps that we can take, positive steps that we can take so that we can restore relationships. Okay? Positive steps. So we're going to turn the corner. We're going to be done with all this, the hard stuff, the garbage. And we're going to start learning how we can take steps to right our relationship, number one, with God, number two, with others. All right, questions, comments?